Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Well, guys, we have severe storms that may threaten lives and property from Texas and Oklahoma to Tennessee and Mississippi. And so this is out of AccuWeather. And while millions of people might be focused on post-holiday activities, maybe taking back and doing exchanges, things like that, severe thunderstorms, including the potential for a few tornadoes, will shift eastward from Texas and Oklahoma to Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and western Tennessee prior to the end of this weekend. A storm will grow in size and strength over the central United States into Thursday. The storm is forecast to produce heavy snow and whiteout conditions in the northern and western flank, and flooding rain on its southern and eastern flank, as we see here. And where the air becomes warm and humid enough, locally drenching thunderstorms will spring up and turn severe over parts of the deep south. The full spectrum of severe weather is anticipated with these storms, everything from frequent lightning strikes to flooding downpours, hail, strong wind gusts, and isolated tornadoes may occur, and this will set up into Thursday afternoon, as we see here. And the red area, very, very severe storms potential. And this is a situation where people should monitor the weather for changing conditions in their area. It's not only for the potential approach of a severe thunderstorm or a tornado, but also when the threat of severe weather has passed. And this is a situation that's going to be developing. We'll keep our eyes open. Anybody in the center part over here of the country, definitely be aware of this. This is Wednesday and Thursday, and then it's going to be moving eastward from there. And so we have heavy rain, possible flooding forecast for the Charlotte area this weekend as the storm nears. And so it'll be more going into the eastern side, going into Saturday and Sunday. Up to 3 inches of rain is heading to Charlotte. And National Weather Service warns that hazardous weather could bring flooding on Thursday and Friday. New Year's Eve and New Year's Day will be wet. So we will get some rain in the Carolinas going into New Year's, and so be aware of this as well. And flooding, we've talked about the flooding, and really flooding has claimed more lives than just about anything as far as the earth changes go. And so we have a report here, this is out of Jacksonville, indicates that river flooding could get worse, and with what we're heading into atmospherically, the situation apparently is going to continue to get more and more severe. And, of course, we watch the skies and we see what's going on in the skies every single day as you guys are sending me photos constantly of what we're witnessing. And obviously, we've had tremendous flooding this year. Tremendous flooding. I mean, do you guys remember in Michigan and Wisconsin what the roads looked like last spring, where all the tar was just basically completely ripped up and just torn apart from the flooding? We've seen tremendous damage. We've seen so many people swept away in cars, just going to try to cross a street when they shouldn't have, or perhaps not, get into safety quick enough. And it's a different world we're living in. We have to be much more careful than we were in times past. And areas that are flood prone, they're going to have to make some changes to keep them safe. And it's big infrastructure changes, which very few countries are doing right now. And so this is all about Jacksonville, Florida, and that area, and how much the flooding has come in, and looking at different reports by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And what we're seeing is just unprecedented. And some areas are going to have to probably be abandoned, as we've talked about that. And other areas, they're going to have to really be fortified. Now, we also have a warning for Australians to expect extreme heat waves after Christmas, as you're seeing those temperatures in Celsius of 45 and 49 degrees. Very, very toasty. Australia has had a drought. They've also had some severe storms that have hit them. As everybody all over the world has had severe weather this past year. It's just been a year for the record books in every way, really. And so the people down under and the land down under are going to be toasty, to say the least. And then over in India, we have 15 trapped miners feared dead now, as flooding thwarts rescue efforts. And so it's nearly 2 weeks after 15 miners became trapped in an illegal coal mine in northeastern India. Rescue efforts to save them have been hampered by more flooding. A shaft of the illegally constructed mine was flooded in Meghalaya state on December 13th, trapping the men inside. And the mine shaft, which flooded after a nearby river overflowed, is estimated to be about 320 feet deep. The men are believed to be trapped at the bottom. That sounds very terrifying. More than 80 rescue personnel, including deep-water divers from the Natural Disaster Response Force, are currently working to pump out excess water in the shaft. And authorities have installed 2 pumps, and state officials have reached out to the experts for technical support to increase the pump's efficiency. And we remember the students of the soccer team that got trapped as well. It's just been one heck of a year for things like that, and more than likely it's going to be even worse next year. So obviously economic growth is slowing, and as this says right here, economic growth is slowing around the world. And the global economy that until recently was humming has completely broken down, a sharp contrast to the picture just a year ago when the world was experiencing its best growth since 2010 and seemed poised to do even better. And already builders in the United States are erecting fewer single-family homes, German factories are sputtering, and in China retail sales are growing at their slowest pace in 15 years. The sudden slowing has fed into a global financial sell-off that has driven several U.S. stock indexes into or near bear market territory with losses of more than 20%. Political turmoil is at the highest level in the U.S. and other advanced economies. And so, as we've seen, we've had the U.S. shutdown. We have the protests, not just in France, as this says, but in so many other countries that we've seen, Belgium and Holland. We've seen protests, in so many different places, in Hungary and in Italy. We've seen them in Taiwan. They've been everywhere. Canada, Ireland, UK. And so it's interesting that it is really the more advanced countries that are experiencing that. And so, we are in a changing time right now. It's changing rapidly. And one thing that we've touched on is China's spending and also lending. And the Chinese government speaks out on potentially seizing Mombasa port over debt. And so the Chinese government has finally spoken out about seizing Mombasa port over debt owed by the Kenyan government. So China has been investing tremendously in South America and Africa. And as many will note, they're investing on bread baskets for one. And also, they're expanding their sphere of influence. And, some might be nervous that they're looking for a Lebensraum, which is a term from World War II, and I won't define it. I'll leave it for you guys, for those that don't know. And it can be viewed as a very wise move, obviously, as we've talked about Sun Tzu's The Art of War, and thinking about the long term and about how power is shifting to the east from the west. And this is a transition period, and we're seeing it. When you look at the state of the United States' infrastructure and you compare it to what's going on, we used to think just a little while ago, and we would think of China in terms of filthy cities and dirt roads and people making $2 a day on average, like back in 1970 when that was the average, and things have changed rapidly. And the U.S. has basically given away all its manufacturing, and that was a problem as the U.S.'s economy transitioned. And so, President Trump wanted to bring the manufacturing back as part of his plans, which obviously is a good thing if you anticipate going to war. Of course, none of us want war. and we recognize that there's bigger forces at play here. But this is just part of what we can see happening here, because we were just reading a week or two ago about some countries in Central America and South America that were having problems paying their loans back to China. And so thus opening themselves up for assets to be taken over, possibly. And so it's very interesting to see all these moves going on. And of course, we know there's been such an imbalance with the United States and China as far as trade. And that imbalance, hasn't stopped. It actually is like at all-time, worst, at all-time highs. So this is just one more thing to watch and make note of. So Britain's banning puppy and kitten sales by pet shops. And if you're going to go get yourself a furry family member, it's going to be at a breeder or it's going to be at a rescue. And this is basically to deal with animal welfare. And how do you guys feel about that? Yeah, I'm definitely all for the animals and taking care of animals as much as possible. And, they are family members that are, for the most part, going to give you complete unconditional love and complete support. And they should be treated with love and respect as well. And so Britain is going to ban the pet shops from selling puppies and kittens anymore. And falling fertility rates. Now, this is out of The Guardian in the UK. And it says that falling fertility rates should be welcomed, population expert says. Figures showing declining birth rates are cause for celebration, not alarm. And, of course, they want to drive the population lower because we've heard about, dwindling resources and just basically overpopulating the planet. And so things are definitely shifting, and the countries that are having the lowest birth rates are the real industrialized. Again, it's those more advanced economically and industrially countries that are having the biggest decreases in birth rate. And so there's more going on than meets the eye here, as I've touched on in many, many videos in the past. And this is video, I think, 998. And I know we have so many brand new subscribers to the channel. The channel's been around for about 15 months now. And, there's 998 videos now. And so pretty much I've touched on so many things because I'm just glancing at the comments. It's harder to keep up with the comments all the time. And some people are saying, well, you should talk about this or talking about that. Why are you hiding this? Why are you hiding that? But of course, they haven't watched the other 997 videos, of which, dozens of times I've talked about all these things from, vaccines and all this, birth rates, many, many dozens and dozens of times. And so this is really interesting to see, what's happening here. As you see the fertility rates, as they are dropping. As you see here, Western Europe 1.6, UK 1.7, Southeast Asia, Oceania 1.7, Central Eastern Europe, Central Asia 1.8, North America 1.8. So obviously, for the most part, the magic figure is 2.1. Below that, we start dropping population. Look at Japan. For instance, Japan has lost a ton of population. And, what's their society like? Well, they work themselves to death. And they're also basically, for the most part, centered in bigger cities, which, again, more population, more pollution. And there's so many environmental factors that go into this. And as I was saying before and brought up, we're living in a really toxic world, and it's full of all sorts of chemicals and pollutants and pesticides, and all that is adding to this. And so as we look at this, we see And this right here is saying infertility isn't the only problem for men with low sperm counts, because sperm counts are at record lows, especially again in the industrialized nations, the nations that are the quote-unquote most advanced. Men's sperm count has been dropping, like it's just gone and plummeted. And it's a well-established fact that sperm counts are plummeting in the Western Hemisphere, dropping by more than 50% over the past 40 years. I've seen over 60% in some studies. But while scientists agree it's a problem, they can't yet agree on the causes. Well, they're not going to always come out with the true causes, as we know. But it is happening, and very fast. So there are a lot of changes here, and nature changes all the time. We don't see Homo erectus walking around anymore. Australopithecus isn't with us anymore, as well as Homo habilis. And so there's, as well as Neanderthal and many other, there's so many what we would call dead ends that we always end up seeing something else pop out. And so perhaps we're actually in that time phase again, where one species is basically in its decline, and there's a new one that's going to come about. So superoxide is a mediator of altruistic aging program in Sarcomere size cerevisiae. And basically it's about aging, and this study again is showing what ages us. There's a variety of things. One of the things that ages us and thus causes disease again, is obviously stress. Stress and tension. Pollution does also cause that. Think about it. For those of you that don't know, it's all about the telomeres, and it's all about your chromosomes. And so as the ends of the telomeres basically, whittle away, disintegrate, when they're gone, we're dead. And so the question is, can we increase the length of the telomeres and thereby increase our own lifespan? And there are things that do help. And one of them is fasting. Another thing is basically caloric restriction. The more food you take in, the more basically you're causing oxidation in your body. And so one of the epidemics that we have upon us in the Western world is the obesity epidemic. And it is a problem in more than one way, because for one, toxins are stored in fat. That's where your body stores toxins. So the more body fat we have on us, the more toxins we have in our system. And as we've talked about, the level of pollution in the world. I mean, we have mother's milk testing, for Roundup in it, basically. And that's just horrible. And we're exposed to so much toxicity that we need to detox on a regular basis. One way you could do it is through intermittent fasting, which we've talked about at length too in other videos. And it could be as simple as just, say, eating in an 8-hour window. For instance, say that you eat lunch at 12 and you're finished with dinner by 8 p.m. and that's it. You don't eat in any other time frame between that 12 to 8. That actually gives your body 16 hours, and 16 hours to just basically rest and digest and start to clean out toxins and bad cells. When we're not taking in new food sources, the body starts to break down cells that are cancerous and cells that are not optimally efficient. So it's got its own waste disposal program that goes on. The problem is when we're constantly eating and constantly grazing, we're not giving it a chance to do that. And so intermittent fasting is a huge, powerful tool. And this is at Awaking Times. And this shows fasting for 72 hours can regenerate the entire immune system. Entire. And the changes that happen are amazing. For those of you that haven't tried fasting, It's just, it's amazing how good you'll feel. Really good. And so lately I've been shifting to basically eating one meal a day. After that meal, I might have a little bit of a snack, but typically lately it's been like around 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. That's when I'll eat and be done. So basically, I'm eating in probably a 2 or 3 hour window lately. And I've done that before, and I've done that kind of long term. I even did that when I was working out very hard in the gym and lifting pretty heavy weights. Much more difficult then. As far as I was also doing it, being vegetarian, which also it just helps with the cleansing. But of course, it depends on what you're eating if you are vegetarian or vegan, because French fries and beer are vegan, but are they going to get you healthy? Everything in moderation, right? Everything in moderation. So, fasting for 72 hours can regenerate the entire immune system. It's amazing what it could do. And this is something I've known instinctively ever since I was about 10, 12 years old. I think the first time I did a fast, I was around 12. And have done them my entire life. And they feel really good. And it is a complete rebooting of your system. Think about your computer, because your body is basically a biological computer of sorts. And so if you leave your computer up constantly and you don't restart it, don't let it shut down and restart, it's going to start basically clogging up. And it's going to start to run slower and slower. And so if you go ahead and do a reboot, it starts to run more efficiently. And so it's the same sort of thing when it comes to fasting. And the ancient practice of abstaining from food for a day, sometimes even a week or more, has a history of curing a whole host of health problems. But even a brief fast can completely reboot your immune system. Now, some nutritionists and unbelievers will criticize it, but research shows that when the body is hungry in short spurts, it can kickstart stem cells. And that's the key. Stem cells are amazing cells that can do amazing things, into producing new white blood cells. White blood cells, also known as leukocytes, are cells which the immune system uses to fight against foreign invaders like viruses and bad bacteria. And so scientists at the University of Southern California found that fasting could be particularly beneficial for people suffering from damaged immune systems, such as cancer patients on chemotherapy, or people with autoimmune disorders. Intermittent fasting even triggers stem cells to regenerate, and that's why this is so powerful. Stem cells are a key to our health, and they are so powerful, and scientists have really started to understand this now. The other thing, too, is basically not over-consuming calories. Caloric restriction increases lifespan by as much as 7 years. And study after study has shown this. So if you are, say, a 180-pound man that's taking in 2,400 calories a day, and you cut your calories to 1,800, chances are you would increase your lifespan by years. And you know what? Your body will readjust. Your thermometer, your internal thermometer will readjust itself. And it'll basically conserve energy. And you don't really need as many calories as you necessarily think. And what it does is it'll basically make it so that you'll have less oxidative stress on your entire system. Because, oxidation ages us, and the more food we eat ages us. And so it just goes to show how many, huge bodybuilders do you see living into their 90s? Part of it is just simply, overworking the system. And so these are things that could really, really help your health. And again, intermittent fasting, I've made some videos on it. It's so healthy. And you see certain traditions always have known this. In Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine, it's understood that our body's metabolism and digestion are often under strain from foods we put into our bodies on a daily basis. For Buddhist monks in Theravada tradition, all eating is confined to the morning hours. implying a daily fast of 16 hours since they don't consume food just before bed or while sleeping. The idea is that the body has plenty of time to process the food we put into it. And so, if you guys haven't tried it, it is a powerful tool for cleansing and healing the body. And the other thing that we find is you will find that you are super sharp mentally. You will find that your thinking has changed. You're just way more clearer-minded. You might even feel inspired. And it's an amazing thing, an amazing process. And as I shared, come January 1st, I'll be starting to do a prolonged fast. And most of the time, my fasts have ranged between a couple days, 2-3 days. That would be pretty much standard, to as long as 5 days. I've done juice fasts of 7 to 10 days as well, as fresh juice is very, very cleansing for the body, especially if you're taking in mostly the vegetable juices. And there's specific juices that will help the body with certain things, and we'll be covering more of that in the future, and there's other videos that I've done talking about that as well. So, my friends, as always, thumbs up to support the channel. Please do subscribe and join our growing family, and click the bell so you get all the notifications. Share as much as possible. Let's wake people up to what they can do to help themselves and increase their health and stay safe in all these times. As always, my friends, God bless and namaste.